welcome, Dr. Mary Dale Peterson. Thank you for coming here today. You are the past president of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. And for those of us who may not know you very well, can you please give us a brief summary about yourself?
So we ended up in Corpus Christi, Texas, and I was the second full-time pediatric anesthesiologist here. And we had a very talented congenital heart surgeon. I immersed myself in the congenital heart work. We had residents that rotated through from UTMB and, a couple, but it was hard those, first few years. I came with a newborn baby, and the person I joined decided he needed some vacation. So I was by myself the first month doing 234 cases, 30 open hearts, newborn baby, husband that I never saw because he was starting his practice. And we were on every other night call, both of us, for the first 5 years. But eventually the administrator of the hospital asked if I would also take over the pediatric intensive care unit, which was very dysfunctional. I was already spending a lot of time there with our post-op hearts. So I did that, got boarded in critical care medicine, and eventually I got a master's in healthcare administration and was tasked with doing some more administrative things. Eventually was asked to become part of our new health plan, Medicaid health plan that the Children's Hospital formed. Eventually became CEO and president of the health plan, and then a couple of years ago I moved over as the chief operating officer and executive vice president for the health system, which includes the health plan, the hospital, and the physician practice group. So that's kind of the nutshell. I have 3 sons, and one of whom is an anesthesiologist and in private practice in Austin.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you. You're very accomplished. You're really inspiring, I have to say. It's amazing to get a chance to talk to you. So thank you.
It's interesting that anesthesia, this really bothers me that anesthesia isn't more sought after by women. Mm-hmm. And I think we should be at least as good as the general surgeons, for crying out loud. Mm-hmm. And they have a higher number of women going into that field than we do. So I would be interested from your standpoint, working with medical students, why you think that is, because I certainly don't understand it. And I think that, all of our anesthesia departments need to do some self-reflection and, looking at their programs with medical students and, why aren't we, showing that this is a great field, just like any other field of medicine. Mm-hmm. It's no different. In fact, I think it's the best field, for anybody, but especially women. Mm-hmm. And so I don't understand that. I do understand. And what is interesting is if you look at the beginning of anesthesia, there are actually more women in anesthesia in the early days. Mm-hmm. Then, of course, that was when it wasn't considered, a real specialty kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But women were considered to have the traits that would make good anesthesiologists, with attention to detail and observation and all these, euphemisms, very much gender biased. But
I wish I can answer that. I have no idea. I actually, unfortunately, here in the Tampa Bay area where I live, the medical school doesn't even have an anesthesia department. So
that's part of a problem, I guess.
That's a big problem. So some of it may be even just exposure, which is really basic.
I'm hoping with all the exposure we got during COVID that maybe other students will think about it and understand, that there's a lot of areas of anesthesia that you can go into in perioperative medicine as well. Mm-hmm. As far as the question of leadership, I think there are a lot of barriers, I would say, for women. Mm-hmm. I would say that, trying to have a career, and especially if you're having a family, there is a lot to juggle. On the one hand, I think women are really good at networking and relationship building. And if you think about a political construct, that should be an advantage. And so maybe you eventually will see that. And I think women, especially nowadays, also, can be very passionate about, injustices or righting wrongs, or, having more of a voice, or making sure that, we work towards something that deals with fairness or equity, whether it's healthcare or any other aspect of medicine, really. And so I think we have the ingredients that are there to create more women leaders. So what are the things that might be lacking? It might be time. And so, my career has spanned a really long period of time. And so that would be a piece of advice I would give. So, and so I took a really long path, and I think that's okay. And I think, universities need to be looking at with tenure and some of those things where people need a longer period of time if they're raising a family. So you keep moving up, but maybe not at a super fast clip, if that makes sense. The other thing is, I think women should not shy away, and this, you've got an MBA, from getting well-versed, whether you like it or not, in aspects of finance. I think that's really a great path for women to be leaders in their groups, leaders in societies, going up that assistant treasurer path. I think it makes you more well-rounded because you'll get sort of the relationship membership, that kind of thing. I think it's really making sure you have those other skill sets, I think, can be very helpful if you are interested in being a leader in whatever capacity. Finally, I think the ASA, from president-elect level, I get to make appointments to committees, and I think over the last few years we have had a really concerted effort on making sure we have diversity among our committees. Gender, race, practice type, geographic location, all kinds of things. It's like a Rubik's Cube trying to put that together. And so when you look at our committee composition, it's very diverse. Where we're lacking in diversity is in the governance structure. And of course, we're a model where we use component societies, the states, and we have some states that are more diverse in their governance and, their delegates or whatever than we have in other states. For us to get leadership eventually to the top, it's going to have to start at a state level.
So you have an impressive list of accomplishments, and you kind of alluded to this a little bit before. How do you balance your home and work life?
It's kind of a euphemism, I think, that whole balance. I think I always did sort of a reassessment every year. And of course, sometimes my husband forced a reassessment earlier. But, it's definitely, there were ups and downs where something would have to give. I remember when I walked into the CEO's office and I said, something has to give. I can't work 80 hours, have 3 children, and do all these things. And, I can't work in these conditions. And so that was the beginning of a negotiation. So, well, what do you want? And I said, well, what do you want? He wanted me to help him, start this health plan, be the medical director. And so I still had 3 jobs, but it wasn't 80 hours a week. It was like 60 hours a week, which I could manage. And it bothers me a little bit when I see young women worrying about what other people think about them. And, I think you'll find, especially if you're a mom and have a demanding career, that you will meet people that are either, I would say, supporters or people that are criticizers that you really should somewhat separate yourself from. And that would be my advice, especially for young women. There's a tendency, I think, and even with my kids, for people to be helicopter parents and have everything perfect. And you're doing a disservice to your children if you don't let them do the majority of their own projects, if you don't let them exhibit some independence, which means that they're going to have some failures. And I think that would be one bit of advice. And I think also finding those women out there that, have, or maybe stay-at-home moms. I have some great friends who I would say looked out for me. They would keep me up to speed on various things, and I loved those friendships. And they appreciated, what I was doing in my career, and I appreciated what they were doing and what they chose. And so it was really mutual respect. And so I would say, find those friends. And then, of course, it was always a negotiation every year with the teachers, on the parent-teacher conferences, of explaining what your schedule was or wasn't, or how chaotic it was, but making sure that you did care about your children and you wanted to converse with the teachers and you wanted to meet with them, but you needed to have enough lead time that you could make that happen. And so I think those are the challenges that we deal with because we don't have an 8-to-5 job. Don't scrimp on getting outside help. And that's my other piece of advice for working women is don't ever scrimp on that. That way, you know that you're covered in your job. You don't have to worry about when kids are sick. You don't have to scramble at the 11th hour. You just have to, every person has to decide what they like doing and what they don't want to delegate. Sometimes by the grace of God, it hadn't been perfect. And, there's no perfect parent or perfect child.
That's sage words there.
Forgive yourself often, and just realize that sometimes, when you're not the helicopter parent, you're giving your children chances to grow.
Thank you so much for coming and having such a wonderful conversation and such great advice and sharing your life experience. I think this is so invaluable to anyone who's going to be watching this. So thank you so much.